Hello you guys, welcome back to another GOATS election video. If you don't know, these are elections that are based on my subscribers and viewers' votes. They had a link to a poll. Actually, there's still a link to a poll in the description if you want to participate, where they got to vote for each president, how they would vote, and we've gotten hundreds and hundreds of votes now, and we can see how you guys affected history by changing the margins based on how you guys voted. Today is a very interesting election and maybe an opportunity for a progressive win, but we're not quite sure. This is 1948 and it's a four-way race. It wasn't in real life. It was between Dewey and it was between Harry Truman, and it was an upset. Everyone thought Dewey would win. Everyone was excited for Dewey to win, or of course his side was, especially after his loss in 1944, although actually he won in 1944. If you want to check how he did that, watch the last video. But yeah, it was a big upset, but there was also two candidates. And let's go to the actual election. Here's a map of the actual election I've made here. And you can see we have margins here based on color, and it's very nice, very pretty. You can see there was a bunch of very close swing states in this election. We have California, we have Oregon, we have all of these. All of these are going to be lean states. Every single one of these. Illinois is close. Indiana and Michigan are very close. Look at almost all of the East Coast is very close. You can see here is our kind of color map here. So safe, likely, lean, tilt. Safe, likely, lean, tilt. So those are the numbers here for a little bit more context. And we end up with 189 votes for him, 303 votes for him. Truman gets a presidency, and we have actually a surprisingly decent large showing for the third parties. 2.37 for the progressives, that's this green, and 2.4% for the states' rights party. That's what these purple states are, and this one is a faithless elector. That is an elector that chooses to vote for a different candidate compared to what the state chose to vote. Now, let's go back here. Now, the other two candidates are going to be Strom Thurmond. He's very popular. He's known for being very anti-civil rights, very pro-states' rights, and still having the longest filibuster. Maybe not something to be quite proud of as a country, but that is the way it is. Anyway, the progressive labor leader is going to be Henry A. Wallace. He had some momentum early on, but he was kind of accused of being a socialist, kind of similar to certain things that happened to him before, and that kind of tanked him in the polls. Now, before, I would cut this up into sections. This would be a section, the South would be a section, the middle of the country would be a section, and we do this, and then the Rust Belt as well. And then we go through every state individually in each section, and then move on to the next section. Instead of that, I'm going to try this time to show the safe states and the likely states. Those are the states that are 15% and above for a candidate, which means they're very solid for that candidate. And then likely is 15 to 5 points. I'm going to show all of those first, and then we're going to reassess, and then we will go over the close states, the more interesting ones, and the ones that maybe decide this election. So let's get to it. Now first, let's start in the South, because there's a block that only exists in the South, safe state-wise, and that is going to be Strom Thurmond's party, the state rights party. And those states are actually all safe, and they're going to be South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, not surprising if you know anything about the United States, and Louisiana. Those are all going to be safe states for Strom Thurmond. And if we go into the actual election, you can see that's pretty much the same, which means they probably got a similar amount in this election vote-wise. We will see. Next up, let's do the safe states for the Democrats. And there are none. So definitely interesting change. We'll see what that means here. And next up, let's go and do the Republican safe states. There are none. There are also no Republican safe states. Now let's check this election. Now in this election, in the real life one, there is only one Republican safe state, and it's going to be a state of Vermont. So I guess not as surprising as a loss of all of these safe states. But you know, safe versus likely, it doesn't really matter. As long as the party wins it, it wins it. Doesn't matter the margin. It's just interesting to see. So maybe not bad yet news for the Republicans and for the Democrats. We will see. Next up, the progressives. That is going to be Henry Wallace's party. And they only have two safe states, but at least it's something, right? They have a safe state in North Dakota. That is going to be a progressive safe state. So the progressives are on the map. We actually only have third parties on the map this time. Very interesting. And then New York, actually, is a safe state for the progressive. This is huge news and a massive blow to Dewey. Dewey pretty much cannot win now. New York is vital. So definitely interesting change in events. We will see what that really means for the rest of the election. But let's continue with the likely states, and remember that is the states with a 15% to 5% win percentage for the candidate that wins it. Now firstly, let's do the Democrats, since we have done a good bit in the South already. Georgia actually survives the onslaught of Strom-Thurmond here and becomes a likely Democrat state. And let's compare that. That used to be safe, now it's a likely. Same is true for Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. So again, let's compare that. Interesting, interesting. So it looks like you're seeing safe states turn into likely states. So a whole tier getting knocked down. Now let's move on to the Strom-Thurmond party. Their likely states are nothing. There are no likely states for Strom-Thurmond. Let's move on to the Republican likely states. Nothing. There is no likely states for the Republicans, which means this election could be even more of an upset. Again, this could still mean Republicans get a lot of votes, but if they do, it means they are fighting very heavily in those states to win them. Let's see if there are any likely states for the progressives. Alright, I see actually a good bit of pickups for the progressives here, including the state of Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, Tennessee, Florida of all places, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Maine. Those are all wins for the progressives, and let's compare it to the actual map. Oh! It's not similar at all, guys. It's not. It's interesting to see what the safe states are, especially New York and North Dakota. North Dakota makes quite a bit of sense if you know your progressive party lore. But that is all of the likely states, all of the solid states for this election. And as you can see, it is not looking good. Let's count up our totals and see where we're sitting. Alrighty, so here are, again, the results for the real election. 39 electoral votes for the Strom-Thurmond party, the States' Rights Party, 0 votes for the Progressives, 189 for Dewey, and 303 for Truman. And in our vote, 0 for Dewey, 54 for Truman, 38 for Strom-Thurmond, and 346 for the Progressives. The Progressives have already won this election, but stick around because I do want to show you the edge cases and just how big this progressive victory is, and then we'll compare it to some past elections real quick, since again this is such a short video. I thought I might as well go a little bit more in depth into the aftermath. Also, if you're wondering why this is 38 and this is 39, it's because our elections do not show any faithless electors. So this one elector that broke away from Tennessee and voted for Strom-Thurmond does not exist. So Tennessee has 12 electoral votes instead of 11, since it's not split, and those all go to the progressives. Anyway, let's wrap this up. Let's see just how much Henry Wallace has won by. Let us start with Missouri. The state of Missouri, with 15 electoral votes in real life, went to the Dems by 58%, which was 8 points above the national average. And for Republicans, it was at 41%, so minus 4 points compared to the national average, with progressives and Dixiecrats getting barely any votes at all, so they are not counted here. Now, after the polling, and now you'll start to see what has happened here, the Dems end up with 39%. The Republicans end up at 12%, the Dixiecrats end up with 13%, so from 0 to 13, and progressives end up with 36% of the vote, which means that this is a very narrow, almost won by the progressive state, with only a +3 lean win for Democrats. Rhode Island is actually in a very similar spot with a +2 lean, so 1 point closer for the Democrats, with the progressives in second place, meaning that this is actually a pickup for the Dems in New England. I guess that's good for them. This is a holdout for them, as you can see. One of the solid states for the Dems is Rhode Island, so very interesting. There's also similar cases between 3 and 2 points for West Virginia, Kentucky, and North Carolina. So this win is not as big as we thought, although it is still massive, and basically the Republican Party has been replaced, I guess you could say. It has certainly been replaced. I'm interested to see how much of the vote Dewey ends up with, and we can see kind of just how shocking it is, the electoral system in America with electoral votes versus the percentage of the population that actually voted for the person. Anyway, this big block right here is mostly grabbed by the progressives, as we're talking about lean votes right now, and that, again, that's between that's less than 5 points, and that goes for Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. They are all between 3 and 2 points as well. New Mexico we'll talk about in just a second. Also in that lean margin is going to be the state of Vermont, which, remember, was the only solid red state in the entire election, meaning that if Dewey did way better here and had a lot more solid states, it might have not even mattered. They might have also been flipped. They would have been tighter margins, but still, yes, flipped. Now, Massachusetts is another safe state for the Dems, or actually, excuse me, it's a likely state for the Dems, but it almost survived. Almost survived. It was only helped by a 2% showing for the progressives in the real election, which is quite a huge amount for a third party in the United States to have 3% of the vote, or 2% of the vote, sorry. So that already added on to our massive amount of votes for the progressives, and it means that this does switch with a +2 leaning to progressives. Now there's 2 states left, and these are not lean states, which means we're talking about tilt states. Tilt states are 1 or less than 1 point. These are the states that are super close, decided by just a couple thousand votes. Let's start off with Minnesota. Now these states are also that same case where progressives do crazily well. In New Mexico, they got 1.8% of the vote, so rounded to 2, and in Minnesota, they get about 2.2% of the vote, again rounded to 2 points. And here's how it turns out. In New Mexico, with less than a point between them, the Democrats are able to squeak out a victory. That is because I had to do the math, and 1.8%, although these both round up to 2, once you stop rounding and you actually take the actual percentage in the math, it does matter just enough to get New Mexico over the finish line. For Minnesota, though, they have a little bit more cushion, and it allows them to be narrowly won by the progressives. So that is the election. As you can see, it is an absolute wipeout for the progressives. They have a huge mandate here, and it's very likely that they have control of the House and the Senate as well with something like this. And this only happened with 37.8% of the vote. They got 383 electoral votes with only 37.8% of the vote. That is because this is a 4-way race, and all 4 candidates got quite a bit of votes. You can see another huge difference here, and this is where all the Democrat support went, is 15.2% for the Strom-Vermont party. And I can see in real life, it was 2.4%, from 2.4% to 15.2%. Quite a crazy difference, and you can see poor Dewey only got 16%. All of the Republican progressives seem to have left him behind, and you can see he goes from 45.07% to 16%. It's quite crazy, quite a fall off, and it's very sad, especially considering he won last episode's election. He won 1944 just barely. I guess this is what happens when you win just barely, or maybe he went back on his word and was not progressive enough. Maybe this caused a massive movement. Who's to say? Now, comparing this to the actual election, of course, there's not much to compare because it's just so different. But it is interesting to see Strom-Vermont not get any success in Arkansas, Texas, or any other state. He was still able to only get what he got, although again he lost 1 point just because of this faithless elector not existing in our poll, as there's not really a way to do it. And the Democrats just got destroyed here. Any state that was not solid is gone, and some states that were solid are also gone. It really depends on that margin, because look, above 15 is safe. So if you have 15 points, that's safe. If you have above 15 points, sorry, that is safe. But it doesn't mean you're safe in this election. You're probably looking at states with massive percentages, like Georgia, that actually are able to survive the storm, and it still pushes them down the peg into the 15-5 range. But there is one more thing I want to compare it to, and that was the last election where progressives actually got states, where they won states. Let's take a look. Alright, I've booted up the last election that had progressive victories in places, and that was actually all the way back in 1924. It's been a long time. And that was actually the first election we ever did in this series, so that is very neat. So let's check it out. This is 1948, and this is 24 years earlier. You can see A few interesting differences. First of all, the flipping of Maryland is quite interesting in a sea of Republican support here. And you can see they were just unable to flip a lot of these states, and the Democrats end up a lot stronger because of it. And the Republicans actually end up winning the election with 41% of the vote. So we're looking at 41% of the vote for the Republicans versus 16% of the vote. That's the difference here. 41% of the vote versus 16%. And actually, very interestingly, 40.1% of the vote went to the progressives versus a smaller amount, 37.8%. That's what happens when there's so many more candidates, when things are so much more fragmented. A smaller vote share can lead to massive results. Another interesting thing I just noticed, and this is the last thing I'll say today, is that isn't it interesting that the Democrats in 1948 get 110 electoral votes, and that also happens to be the same amount that the progressives got in 1924. Maybe this is some sort of jab to the Democrats, I don't know. Some sort of weird twist of fate. I'm not quite sure. But again, very interesting. And one more thing, it's very interesting to see how much more solid states are. This is an absolute blowout, but there's just not many solid states here. Compared to here, you can see the progressive movement is alive a lot more in America at the time, because you can see there's a lot more chances for them to grow safe, while even with a massive jump in vote share, they are not able to get a lot of safe states here, because there's not a lot of states in real life where progressives were voted for en masse in 1948. That is not the case for 1924. So with that, that is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed. I'm sure this was a little bit shorter than you were expecting. Let me know if that is a good thing or a bad thing, or is it better to go regional and kind of be more surprised by the result, more tense. You know, you don't know what's going to happen. If we started over here, it might look like the Democrats might win. If we started over here, it might look like, okay, the progressives are winning, but this is how it was in 1924, and they still lost. It might give a little more suspense, but I don't know if people watch them all the way through that much. I feel like a lot of people just skip to the end. I'm not blaming y'all for that, it's fine. But yeah, very interesting. Let me know what you think. Also, one more thing. Here is the Discord server for my YouTube channel. You can always find it in the description, and sometimes I have it in a pinned comment. And I wanted to show you something related to the elections. I made a new channel here called Goats Elections and Other Cool Stuff, where I actually have kind of written down all of the elections so far, of course barring the one from this video, as I don't want to spoil. And I have detailed results here with popular vote count, as well as actually vote count, which I think is really interesting. So you can see how close the votes are. And electoral vote count, states flipped, states carried, all stuff like that. I even count the swing states and the closest states. It's just really interesting, and there's even like hyperlinks here pretty much where you can go between the elections. And I also provide extra maps if you think these maps are pretty, where you can look at maps where there are no numbers in the way, or you can look at maps where there are no margin colors and it just shows who won what. But yeah, that is about it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you so much to my 2 members. If you want to be a member, there is a link in the description as well. Just for a couple of bucks a month, you can get longer special videos from me, emojis in the chat, special channel on Discord, and a bunch of other things. Information on that, of course, is in the description box once you click on that link. Anyway, shilling aside, I hope you guys have a good day, and I hope you see me soon for Eisenhower's 2 elections, 1952 and 1956. Let's see if we can change history some more. That's about it. See ya.